I'm going to ask Mia Gonzalez from OMN to come give us a little overview, because they're the ones who are really initiating and moving forward with the case, and they've represented the stakes in this format. So before we go into the panel, I think it would be important to get a gist of things and how things are moving along, a bit of the history, and what's to come forward. So Mia, if you'd be kind enough to, Mia Gonzalez from OMN. And James Miller as well. Sorry, James.
Thank you. As you said, I'm Mia Gonzalez, and I'm here today with James Miller. We're from the law firm of O'Malley and Myers, and our firm has been handling Ranjit Singh's case for approximately the last 4 years, and we brought the petition on his behalf to the United Nations Human Rights Committee. We just want to talk for a couple of minutes, give you an overview of the claims.
Is the microphone there?
What?
Oh, wait, 1 second.
No, get rid of the other one.
Sorry, man. My fault.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So as I was saying, we just want to talk for a couple of minutes, give everyone an overview of the case, a little description of the Human Rights Committee's decision, and then a preview of what's to come. And then afterwards, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. I think there's also a video or something that's going to be shown. So in December 2008, our firm, on behalf of Ranjit Singh, filed a communication with the United Nations Human Rights Committee, which alleged that France had violated Mr. Singh's rights recognized by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, also known as the ICCPR. In particular, we alleged that French laws requiring Mr. Singh to remove his turban for national identity photographs violated Mr. Singh's religious freedom. Mr. Singh refused to remove his turban in connection with renewing his French residency document, and as a consequence, he was deemed an illegal resident of France. And notably, Mr. Singh had received political asylum from France before, so this was a country he went to seeking a safe haven. Moreover, Mr. Singh was denied rights and privileges granted to French residents, including denial of free health care, unemployment and housing benefits, as well as other benefits for senior citizens. In the fall of 2011, the Human Rights Committee issued its views on Mr. Singh's petition. The committee found in Mr. Singh's favor and noted that Mr. Singh's use of a turban was a religiously motivated act, and the law's requirement that people appear bareheaded in identity photographs used on residence permits interferes with the exercise of freedom of religion. The committee further noted that this interference was not momentary. As some of you may be familiar, France claims that the religious interference is only for the click of a shutter, the camera shutter, and it's just a millisecond. But the committee found instead that the interference would be continuing, because Mr. Singh would always appear without his turban in the identity photograph, and could therefore be compelled to remove it during identity checks. Needless to say, we were very pleased with the committee's decision. Not only was the decision important for Mr. Singh and other Sikhs in France, but also for any other people facing similar religious discrimination. And as some of you may have heard, France was given 6 months to tell us and to tell the UN what it was doing to implement the decision. And recently we heard back from France. Unfortunately, France's response was quite disappointing. France simply reiterated arguments that it had made before, the very same arguments that the committee had dismissed. And France made pretty clear that it doesn't plan to change its policies. We have now been given an opportunity to submit another statement to the UN, which we will be doing in the next couple of weeks. And in that statement, we're allowed to say whether or not we find France's compliance satisfactory. Obviously, we do not, since France refused to implement the decision. But that's pretty much where we go from here. Is we get another say before the committee. The committee has a special rapporteur who will follow up on Ranjit Singh's case and other cases that are still pending. Okay, I'm sorry. All these notes. All right, we'd also like to note very quickly that we've also handled Shingara Singh's case, which is very similar to Ranjit Singh's, and that's still pending before the committee. We're hopeful that there'll be a similar decision, but you know, it's still pending. And then finally, we'd like to thank United Sikhs, one, for inviting us here today to be a part of this conference, and also for partnering with us in this case. It's been a great experience for our lawyers, and we're happy to have been able to help out United Sikhs and Ranjit Singh. Thank you.
Is anyone having a question or anything? All right, Amia, we have a question for you.
Oh, sure.
I'm just wondering what legal or other resources are viable options at this point.
Right now, the next step is, as we described, that we get to respond to France's recent communication. Unfortunately, the UN decision is not binding on states parties, so there isn't a ton of legal recourse we have through the UN. I think the best way forward is to continue to follow up with the special rapporteur, continue to make an issue of this, continue to remind people about the committee's decision. But in terms of, you know, a new court or something else, there's not really much anywhere else to go in the near future.
In the discussion earlier, some of the recommendations that came were the fact that how can government agencies, even though it's the United Nations, the governments of other countries, how can they put the pressure on perhaps the UN in moving forward in that case? Is there such a thing as pressure from other countries as well?
I think so.
It's worth noting also that different countries sort of treat the issues in different ways. And obviously, part of the briefing that our firm had submitted in Mr. Singh's case sort of noted different treatment among different state parties to the convention, which I do think is an important source of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, there are some United States court decisions that mention the issue of removing a turban and how it's a violation of a person's religious freedoms. I think Canada has similar decisions now. So, you know, other states can certainly pressure France if they choose to do so. The other thing is, as I said earlier, we can all try to keep the pressure on the UN Human Rights Committee. And even though their decision is not binding, you know, make sure that they follow up, make sure that, you know, France knows that people are watching and, you know, keeping tabs on this decision.
What about the European Court of Justice? If there is a French decision, you can take it to the European Court of Justice. They order somebody to do something.
Yeah, so my understanding, and I'm not terribly familiar with the European Court of Justice, but is that this case has already been through all the domestic French courts and to the European Court of Human Rights, and we did not prevail in those courts. But, I mean, we can certainly look into a different avenue.
I have a question. I mean, UN is established on the basis of human rights, and France is the main, the country, just the United States, United Kingdom, those countries, they established this kind of thing. Why France is violating this kind of because he's the main person in the when they established the UN now in the Lake Success Mall first time, and those time he's the member. And still he is the champion, and he is violating the law. He's taking some human rights in their hands.
I mean, I honestly don't know why France isn't following this decision and why France's laws are the way they are. I mean, whether it's right or not, many of the Security Council members and original UN members unfortunately continue to violate certain human rights. And I think, you know, the only thing we can do is sort of point out and advocate for people whose rights are being violated.
USA can put a pressure on the France because it's also is a major member of the UN.
I mean, we'll try to do what we can through our response.
Okay, thank you.
Question back there.
Mia, could I just ask a very simple question, which is about the way the UN makes its decisions in terms of timing, because the French government had 180 days to respond, which implies it was the September decision, but the decision was actually made in July, if I'm not mistaken. And it's really saying, all right, Ranjit Singh's case, we've had a response. But with Shigala Singh Man's case, it's almost like the community does need to know as soon as possible, because I don't think the community knew till January that the decision had been made, and that reduces the time you can actually exert pressure on the French government.
Right. So the committee made its decision in July, as you said, of last year. The decision was published in September of last year, and that's when the 180 days started ticking for France. We don't know what happened, and we've gone back and forth with the UN on this, why we didn't get properly notified. We did find out in January, and United Sikhs disseminated the information as quickly as they got it. And then France had until, I think it was the 27th of March, to give their response. In terms of Shingara Singh's case, we've asked the UN Petitions Office when it will be scheduled to be heard by the committee. And the committee's policy is that they will not tell petitioners when their case will be heard, just in case for some reason it doesn't get heard in a particular session. I think the committee meets 3 times a year, but I don't know where in the queue of cases Shingara Singh's case is, and we haven't been able to get that information.
Yeah.
Thank you. So is there any precedence for this case, or this is a standalone or first in the history that, another person of another faith is asking that my headgear or my turban should be allowed? Has there been any other case of such nature in Europe or in France?
I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I think that there are other similar cases. I think this one is notable because we got a favorable decision. But I think that there are other similar cases as to France and other European countries.
And they are being followed, or any decision has reached those cases?
I believe some are pending. I don't know how some of the prior cases panned out. I do know that a bunch of them weren't successful, in which case there would be no decision to follow.
Thank you.
Will this decision only affect the Sikh turban, or will it work for other religious articles of faith, say the Muslim hijab or Christian cross? Is it specifically for Sikh turban?
The UN decision was specific to the Sikh turban, although I think the logic would apply more broadly. I'm not sure how the cross would work in terms of photograph. France's claim is really that a turban somehow obscures the face for an identity photograph, which we obviously don't believe is true. So it might be more applicable to hijab or other veils or something similar.
One quick question. Does this apply to a Catholic nun in France that she has to take her, have it all?
I don't know.
Very good question. She gets pulled over by the cops, that she has to identify herself. I'm assuming it's water, right?
Yes.
Could you please repeat the question?
Sure.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So he asked whether France's laws would apply to a Catholic nun, whether she'd have to remove her habit in an identity photograph. The answer is I don't know. Yes. It does apply?
Yes.
Okay.
Certainly a compelling question, though,
Yeah.
given the French state's sort of demographic
Yeah.
it's a very compelling question.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I apologize for,
Thanks so much for the chance.
I want to thank both Ms. Gonzalez and Mr. Miller for taking on this